The following podcast is a presentation of Project Entertainment Network.
Welcome to the Sample Chapter podcast, the show where authors read a sample chapter from one of their books. Here's your host, Jason A. Meiske.
Hello, Sample Chapter listeners. This is episode 180 of the Sample Chapter podcast. I am your host, Jason A. Meiske, and I'm back. I took an unscheduled break last week after 179. I'm just going to be honest here. I'm going to be real with you here for a few moments. I was approaching burnout, to be perfectly honest. I had a lot of things on my plate, very busy with work. My email, the Sample Chapter email that I tell you about every time, I was still dealing with repercussions from those jokers about 2 months ago. And just, lots of stress, lots of things going on that were making me, just extra stressed out. I haven't been writing consistently, and that's been adding to my stress because, I want to write. I'm a writer, and I do this show to help other writers. So lots of things kind of on my plate, and it was just really burning me out. And last week, it was already Tuesday before I even realized what day of the week it was, and I hadn't prepared my episode, and I was really kicking myself, and I thought, you know what, I'm gonna take the day and relax. And I don't even think I even posted anything until Wednesday, because it was the rest of that Tuesday was still extremely busy. And then thank you for those of you who reached out to me, checking on me, asking if I was okay. That was very sweet of you. But yeah, the rest of the last week, then I took my time to, of course I got work I have to do, but in my free time, I straightened out my email issues. Just a refresher, about 2 months ago, a bunch of jokers, I guess, signed up the Sample Chapter email for a crap ton of spam email. And I was literally getting, I got added to a couple of dozen lists. And all of a sudden I'm getting hundreds of emails per day of nothing but spam. And it was quite ridiculous. And because of that, these last 2 months, it's been very difficult for me to follow up with author requests. And I really hate, missing out on a lot of these wonderful authors that I found some, but I think in the process of cleaning things up, I think I've lost several as well. Now that that's fixed, I am going back through. I think the most fair thing for me to do is just respond to my most recent requests that I have, because they're the newest ones. If you have sent me an email request in the last few months, please send me a new one, because I may have just gotten rid of it all. In an effort to clean things out, I may have just gotten rid of it inadvertently. And I hope you can understand. I apologize for the confusion, but reach out to me and let me know. Meanwhile, I'm going to get back to the most recent people. Guests like today, they were getting a hold of me through social media, which is still a good way to reach out to me as well. I still prefer the email for most people. Today's guest is a return guest, so we know each other on social media, and that was cool. So we were able to chat back and forth that way. But yeah, if you want to reach out to the show, you can at samplechapterpodcast@gmail.com. Right now, I don't have any plans of changing that email. Now that I got this, I think I have it all straightened out, and seems to be working well again. I've got some spam filters on it. No, but of course, if I do decide to change the email, you'll be the first to know, and I'll change it on the website and everywhere else. But back to my stress levels and burnout. Just honestly, it was really getting me thinking, man, have I reached the end? Have I reached the end of the show? Because this is my 4th year doing it. And that is something that's on my mind, wondering how long I'm going to do it. But, I think so long as I can manage. And taking last week off to take care of some things and refresh myself a little bit was good. It recharged the batteries some, and I'm gonna take some more time once in a while this year to do that, because I really got to take care of myself, and I don't do that enough. I'm realizing I'm always taking care of, of course, my family. My family comes first, and then my work, my day job. But I don't do a lot for myself, and I'm gonna start doing a little bit more of that. And so as long as I can continue to take care of things and manage my time, then I really have no plans to cancel the show or bring it to an end anytime soon. Gosh, I've got dozens of emails right now from people wanting to come on, and that's just a glowing candle in the window for me. That's a lighthouse on the shore, showing me the way and showing me that, there are still a lot of people out there that listen to the show and want to come on, and getting some of the responses I get from fans out there all over the world, letting me know how much they're enjoying it, really means a lot. So thank you all. And I'm gonna keep doing this for the foreseeable future. So, well, speaking of guests, as I alluded to, this week's guest for episode 180 is a return one, L.M. Riviere. She was with us back in season 2, if there is a season 2, year 2, whatever you want to call it. We were discussing her debut series, the Innisfail Cycle, book 1, and today she's back to discuss book 2, the Southernmost Star, and read a sample chapter. We have a fantastic time discussing her publishing company, Lights Out Inc., adult fantasy, epic adult fantasy, her love for that, humility versus false humility, and imposter syndrome. And we get sidetracked a lot. It's actually a lot of fun. We get sidetracked a lot talking about books and what we like to read and weather and stuff like that, and it's actually a lot of fun. We have a good time. And speaking of, so that you'll know, you're gonna hear there's a book that I'm describing in the conversation, and I forgot what the title is. The title is called The Hunger by Alma Katsu, and I actually mentioned that on a previous episode with Mark Harms because of his podcast, the Beards, Books, and Bourbon podcast. And that's how I found out about that book, and then he and I discussed that. But that's the book I'm telling LaNae about, and it's one of them. I'm looking forward to diving into that one here pretty soon myself. I gotta say, that's one of the nice things about last week too, taking some time off. I did a lot of reading. I finished up 3 books last week that I've been trying to get through for a while, and started another and almost finished it. So that was nice. That was nice to get to spend some time reading. Anyway, I have been chatting on here for coming up on, right now it says 8.5 minutes, but I've got to add a couple of ads. So let's get to that so that this episode is not too long. Let's start first off by thanking our sponsor, Scrivener. Scrivener is my favorite writing software. I do all of my writing in there, and I did there over the weekend. I got to get back into my writing a little bit, and that felt really, really good. Hey, Scrivener 3 is now available, full of tons of new features, and I'm going to be finding out some more stuff about that here real soon. Exciting information that I can share with you. So stay tuned for that in the near future. Meanwhile, check out this advertisement and find out how you can save 20% on the regular desktop version. Jason here. Hey, I wanted to take a moment and tell you about my favorite writing tool, Scrivener. Now, I know you've heard about Scrivener because their writing software has been embraced by hundreds of thousands of other writers like you and I, from the novice to best-selling novelists. The reason we all use it is because of Scrivener's core concept to bring all the writing tools you use together in a single application. And with tools like automatic backup, character maps, project goals, and let's not forget that amazing corkboard, you can see why I use Scrivener every day. As a bonus for Sample Chapter podcast listeners, use code CHAPTER for 20% off your desktop version. Scrivener writing software, built by writers for writers. right. Thank you once again to Scrivener. I also want to thank, not a sponsor, but a partner with us, which is Audible. Audible has partnered with the show in an effort to provide you with a free audiobook and 30-day trial just by going to audibletrial.com/samplechapter. I'm pretty sure that's the link. If you go to the show notes or go to samplechapterpodcast.com, you can see the link there on how to sign up. But my memory is not that good lately. So, listen to this. And I know I say there what it actually is. Hello friends, Jason here, and I wanted to take a moment to tell you about a great offer from Audible. Like you, I'm very busy. I have a full-time job, a family, I'm a thriller author, and I do this weekly podcast. But I also love to read. That's where Audible is a lifesaver for me. Whether I'm mowing the yard, working out, driving back and forth to work, or doing some other menial task, I can still listen to an incredible book through Audible. And now you can get a free 30-day trial by going to audibletrial.com/samplechapter. By doing that, you'll not only have that 30-day trial, you'll also gain access to guided wellness programs, theatrical performances, A-list comedy, exclusive Audible originals, and even podcasts like the Sample Chapter Podcast. Last year is the first time I ever achieved my own personal reading goals, and it was because of some wonderful titles I listened to on Audible. Some of those titles were Ready Player 2 by Ernest Cline, narrated by Will Wheaton, the Awaken Online series from Travis Bagwell, narrated by David Stifel, Patient Zero by Jonathan Mayberry, narrated by the incredible Ray Porter. And I'd be remiss if I didn't mention previous guest Scott Meyer with his Magic 2.0 series, narrated by Luke Daniels. It's a lot of fun and definitely worth your time. Hey, full disclosure, by signing up at audibletrial.com/samplechapter, the show does get a little monetization, which goes directly towards any production needs with the show. So you're also helping us out here by signing up. So what are you waiting for? Head on over now to audibletrial.com/samplechapter and start your free 30-day trial today. All right. Thank you so much to Audible. Audible is actually, that's one of the ways I finished up 2 of my books last week is through Audible. So I had 2 of them, 1 paperback, 1 ebook, and 2 Audible books that I did last week. So I'm a fan, and you can sign up as well for free. Get that first month free. Hey, I want to thank our podcast network friends, starting with Pop Goes the Culture Network, home to about a dozen other shows, all of them pop culture related. Shows like The Multiverse Tonight, The Alamo Backlot, Fellowship of the Geeks. Of course, there's the flagship show, Pop Goes the Culture Podcast, and Two Dads Review, just to name a few. So click that link in the show notes for more. And yeah, hop on over there and check out some of those shows. It's lots of fun stuff. All your pop culture news right there at your fingertips. The other podcast network that I'm so happy to be a part of is the Project Entertainment Network. Home to more than 30 different shows, a wide variety. You have the Lunch Ladies podcast, Necrocasticon, Monster Attack, the Bazong podcast, Your New Opinion. There's so much to talk about, including this crazy one right here, Gutting the Sacred Cow. What the heck is that?
Hey everybody, it's Kevin Goatee.
It's Kevin Israel.
And you're listening to Gutting the Sacred Cow on the Project Entertainment Network. Hey Kevin, what exactly is Gutting the Sacred Cow?
Gutting the Sacred Cow is a podcast where we invite comedians and talented people every episode to come on and trash a movie that you probably love or someone you know loves.
That's right. Our guests have trashed such films as Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, Gone with the Wind, Grease, even Star Wars. Can you imagine the balls on that guy? Did he succeed?
I cannot.
Yeah, well, listen and you'll find out. But this is Kevin Goatee and Kevin Israel for Gutting the Sacred Cow.
All right, so find all of those shows and our friends in the show notes. The links are there. Let's hop on over to our guest, L.M. Riviere, and her latest book, The Southernmost Star. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Sample Chapter podcast. And this week, I'm so happy to have a return guest, somebody from year 2. Actually, it would be episode 50. So, I mean, this is a while back. But it also goes to show how far back we go. I am here today with L.M. Riviere. Previously, we were talking about The Sons of Mill. And this week, it's the sequel to that book, The Southernmost Star. So as a reminder, L.M. Riviere is a freelance writer, editor, and photographer. Book 1, The Sons of Mill, which is book 1 of the Innisfail Cycle, was her first full-length novel. Ladies and gentlemen, L.M. Riviere.
Hello. There's not a better lead-in than that, right?
That's all right. I get that a lot too, where it's like I do this like big lead up and it's like, hey, thanks. It's always fun.
There's like that scene in Game of Thrones when he's like, when Miss Missandei is going down all her list of like the unbroken, the unbent, all the different that she has. And he's like, this is Jon Snow. He's taking it.
Oh my gosh, that's how I felt with Jeff Arch a few weeks ago, because it was just like the list went on, and I was like, oh my gosh, I gotta cut this off so we can start talking, and he was laughing about it too. He's like, well, we're all done. We're out of time now, Jeff. Thanks for coming on.
Yeah, right.
So, hey, how are you doing, LaNae?
I'm good. Thank you for asking. How's everybody over there?
It's Missouri. The weather's changing up all the time. It's cool one day, warm the next, and then it's rainy and back and forth.
In the Midwest.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
How's Florida treating you?
It's good. I spend most of my free time in that clear blue water and like diving and snorkeling and paddling and doing outdoor stuff. That's why I'm here.
The beach life.
And playing around with my cameras. That's about it.
Yeah.
It's hot. It's already really, really hot. I think we call it Satan's armpit outside right now. So it's already 100 degrees.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh. Yeah, I'm not looking forward to that. We keep warming up to about 80, and then it's been, with all the rain, it's just been so ridiculously humid. So
Missouri, I think, is about as humid as it is here in Florida, honestly. And I will always argue until I'm Burger that like in the Midwest, especially like in Michigan, it's cold water. Cold water is dense, so whenever it's humid, it's worse. At least here, it's like salt water, and it's in every single particle you breathe. Nothing but all year round. So,
I tell you, I thought I knew humidity until I got to Japan, and then it was like,
oh really?
You step off the plane and you're instantly wet. It's just
where were you?
Yeah, we were in Tokyo, outside Tokyo at Yokota Air Force Base for a while.
Oh wow, I didn't know it was that humid there. I thought it actually was kind of dry. Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah, I was there for the big earthquake and all the radiation. That's what led to this voice that I've got.
Everybody likes this voice. I just want to throw it up. You and me go a ways back. We've been talking about this for a minute now.
Yeah.
You can line up all the girls from Lights Out Inc. We're like, yep, Jason, he's got a voice like a spider.
I have a voice for radio. What can I say?
No,
the face for it. Well,
in a derogatory manner, we are complimenting him, just to be clear.
Oh my gosh, y'all are too nice to me. Well, speaking of Lights Out, tell us about Lights Out and how this came to be. This is huge.
Oh no. Where's my magic glitter that I can throw and then just disappear in the dust? Lights Out Inc. is a small independent publishing house that focuses on speculative fiction, and I prefer very genre-bending fiction featuring strong female characters that are central to the plot. You don't get a lot of damsels in distress or like super clever, handsome main characters that are men, and that's the stories essentially just revolves around them and their libido, as it were. We like stories that have strong, spunky women. Think Naomi Nagata from the Expanse series. That's my ideal heroine always. And we want to publish fiction that is adult centric. So no young adult fiction. We want to publish fiction that has a strong story as well, and doesn't necessarily have to squeeze into one genre category. So that's kind of what Lights Out does. And so far we've got about 6 authors, and we're looking to grow over the next few years, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and I love that idea behind it too, with the strong female characters, because it's, whenever I think strong female characters, I think of Ripley from Aliens, and because it's that right balance of reactionary and taking charge.
Right. And but she was also still a woman. Like, they weren't trying to like make her something that she wasn't. She was just a woman who was like, you know what, I'm going to do this job because I don't think there's anybody else that can do this job. So therefore that means it's got to be me. And
exactly.
Ripley's like great.
Yeah. Yeah, I love it. She's a mother figure to all the soldiers and to Newt, but then it's like, all right, give me that gun, show me what I'm doing here. All right, perfect.
She gets that suit in Aliens. The first time I saw it, I think I was about 6 years old. I was like, yeah, can't get it. I want to be part robot.
Right? Oh my gosh. Yeah, I was whenever I joined the military, I was looking for those forklift. They said, yeah, you're going to drive a forklift. And I was like, oh, great. Do we have those? No, that's not really yet.
But that's not a thing.
Oh, man.
And there's no Michael Behans either. That's a real shame for us ladies, just, you know.
He's a good guy. Yeah.
Yes.
You know, my wife likes him better as Kyle Reese.
Which is?
From the first Terminator.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
That's right. On Your Feet, Soldier. I remember him.
Yep.
That movie came out when I was 4, though, so fair play.
Yep, she likes him better there. I like him better in he was a bad guy, but Tombstone as Johnny Ringo.
I love him in Tombstone.
Mm-hmm.
My dad named my little brother Wyatt.
Oh, nice.
Because of that. He was very into Tombstone. I think we watched it just about every single night for a really long time. But, yeah. Oh
my gosh. Well, all right. So this is the danger of talking with old friends on here. Is we get sidetracked quite a bit, but it's good. It's a lot of fun. I think people are going to have fun listening to this. But I want to make sure and tell people about your books.
Okay.
And we'll keep the focus. Let's try and get back there. So, I mean, gosh, this has been 3 years ago now. January of 2019, you were like my second episode of season 2. Yeah, I don't really do seasons, but that's where the year kicked off. And yeah, we were talking about Sons of Mill. How'd the book go? I know you changed the cover, which is fantastic looking.
Thank you.
I got a chance to read it myself. I loved it. I think in my review, I made sure to say, like, man, I could smell the dirt as I was reading it because it was so detail oriented and very rich.
Thank you. Yeah, I do tend to ramble a bit about the outdoor scenes. I think that has a lot to do with the fact that I'm also an outdoor photographer. So I think Kaylee, that's LOI's art director. She's always kind of harping on me about my wind. So I'm always describing the wind in like every single scene. I'm like, it's an enclosed space, but somehow we can work the wind in. Yeah, the Sons of Mill, the first time we published it, we self-published, and it didn't work out so well because whenever you're writing fantasy, especially epic adult fantasy, there's not quite the same market for that as there is for the really hot young adult fiction right now, which we talked about in other threads and places that I'm not a huge fan of. But anyway, didn't go so well. It took a while for it to find its audience. It needed some more editing. It needed a little bit more oomph, and then I signed up with Episodic, which was the precursor to Lights Out Inc., which is my publication I'm the editor-in-chief of. And we did pretty well with that for a little bit. We got it edited, we got a little bit more exposure. And then finally, when we transitioned to Lights Out Inc. and I took over, we just gave it a whole new overhaul, gave it a brand new look, gave it a real squeaky clean edit. And I think we've got some pretty good high reviews for Lights Out Inc. because of the Sons of Mill and the other titles that we have. So we're doing pretty well, I think.
Fantastic.
I don't know about the Southernmost Star yet because we released it 10 days ago. But and when I say we, I'm referring to Lights Out Inc. as well. I'm not using it in the royal verbiage. Sure. I think the Sons of Mill for myself personally was if you read the back of my book, you know, the process that it had gone through. I wrote that book 20 years ago, and then I rewrote it, and then it was subsequently stolen from me. It was plagiarized, and I stopped writing for a really long time. And then it took a long time for me to kind of shake myself out of that. And then I started rewriting it and finally finished it. And that's, you know, when I started finally trying to publish it. And then I don't know. So it's been on quite a long 21-year journey, The Sons of Meal. So where it is now, I'm happy with it, and really, really happy to have just released the sequel, which the third book is coming this fall. And
fantastic.
yeah, they're all done. So the third book comes out this fall, and the third book answers everybody's questions that they have now that they've read the second, if they have. And it gives you all of the fighting that you could possibly want. I guess that's essentially the entire purpose of that book. But yeah, I don't know. It's I think The Sons of Meal taught me a lot, and its progress and its progression through publication has taught me so much about the industry and about myself as an author and my strengths and weaknesses. And I mean, I built a publishing house on its strength. So I think that's, I don't know, I think we kind of came kind of far, and Lights Out Inc. is it's definitely a product of The Sons of Meal, let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, it seems like I remember talking to you before, and you were, I wouldn't say shy, but you were, you know, excited and yet nervous too about this process with the first book and all that. But then now to see it today, and I mean, I've been watching you, you know, for a couple of years now, and following you and seeing everything that you do, it's just like, oh my gosh, I mean, she's editor-in-chief, and you're helping with the art and helping other people with their books, and it's just, oh my gosh, I mean, you become a rock star.
I don't know about that yet. My follow count is not quite as high as I would like to. But no, you know, I appreciate that. Thank you. It's been a long journey, and I don't want to stop now. So I think I'm finally getting to the position where I've stopped feeling like an imposter, and I am an author. I'm a published author, and I've gotten very good ratings, and I'm going to continue to try to make my readers happy and continue to create content that I want to give to people, and stories that I want to tell, which when the third book comes out, by the way, I have other fiction that will be coming out and will be more in line with literary fiction, with some fantastical elements because it's me. But, you know, it's not going to be quite an epic fantasy series. And, you know, maybe one day we'll get back into Innisfail. But for now, when the third book comes out, Innisfail's done for a little while. We got some other stuff we want to focus on. But, you're going to cut some of this out, right? Because I'm just rambling at this stage.
I leave it all in there. Nobody knows a thing.
Yeah, nobody's going to notice. She rambled for 25 minutes about nothing.
No, this is great. No, it's actually got me thinking about, like, you had a couple of things you talked about. So let me start first with Sons of Meal, and give everybody a little bit of a recap, what it's about, and then what they can expect with Southernmost Star.
Okay, so the Sons of Meal takes place in a seemingly pre-Celtic society in this continent called Innisfail. And Innisfail is dominated by a godlike race called the She. And if you know anything about Irish mythology, the She are what you would base Tolkien's elves and fairies and, you know, people, or, you know, creatures from an other world, quote unquote. But in my story, it's much different. These are gods. They're not little tiny winged creatures that grant wishes, and it's not all beauty and happiness. The other world is responsible for some of the darkest stories ever. And Ireland is where it all comes from. So that's kind of, you know, Innisfail is basically Ireland. I don't want to give away too much because there's a lot of revealed to be discovered as you read. But in this tale, the Innisfail is kind of divided into these client kingdoms of Aeschi. Aeschi is where the She live. The humans are not allowed to venture there. And there is someone who's kind of outcast in the wilderness, and he's not happy about it. He spends his days drinking and dicing and, you know, essentially just being a grumpy jerk. And he runs across a situation that he initially tries to avoid. because conscience isn't really one of his strengths. Like, he's a bit of a jerk. Did I mention that? And in this rare moment, he realizes he has to help this person. And as he does that, it kind of catapults him into a larger tale, onto a larger story. He becomes part of a conspiracy and political melee, I want to say. It kind of gets him, it just doesn't stop. He gets, the decision is made, and then it's just one thing after another. And so in the Southernmost Star, we are reintroduced to those characters. I don't want to give away spoilers, but the main character he's reassumed his proper identity.
Okay.
Who he really is, not who he is projected to be through the entire first half of the Sons of Meal. And with that, he's made a lot of realizations about himself and about what he wants. And he's made a decision to do something that has, again, far-reaching consequences for every single person in Innisfail, because the other main character, Una, she's the product of two of these client kingdoms, and she's the heir to both, and that's a problem. Because it's not what she wants. First and foremost, she doesn't want to be responsible for the lives of anyone. She doesn't want to make these decisions, and she doesn't want anything to do. She doesn't want to live the life that people want her to live. She wants to be free. So anyway, it's these two making these extremely selfish decisions for themselves. And the book kind of begs the question, when is making decisions for yourself really truly selfish? And if the consequences of those decisions harm other people, is it the right decision? And there's a lot of other political schemes and intrigue and mystery that's involved in this tale. And a lot of the characters that you meet in the Sons of Meal, the Southernmost Star kind of shifts focus to them for a little bit, while that larger question of when is selfish too selfish? Yeah. You know what I mean? For the two main characters. And so you're kind of just like pulling back the tapestry to reveal the rest of this world and the characters that are in it and how it affects them, and what's happening with all of those ancillary characters and who the real villains are. There really aren't any. And that's the point. Everybody's a great character. So the second book is more introspective, and it's more about the relationships between the characters than it is about the progression of the story itself. That is what the third book will do. The third book is back into the story, and it's, just a race to the finish. Yeah. But with the second book, I kind of wanted to give it the Empire treatment. You know what I'm talking about. Star Wars, A New Hope. You introduce all the characters, you show them what's going on. We got lots of adventures, going on.
Right.
And, you kind of end on a little bit of a high note. And then in Empire, it's dark. It's dark. Right. There's texture. There's more. The relationships between the characters are more developed, and who they are as people is more developed. And you start to realize, like, oh man, I thought that guy was a villain. Oh, but he's really not a villain. You know what I mean? I thought the good guy was a good guy, but he's not really such a good guy. He's kind of a selfish jerk. But so it's just showing people as they are, and all of the decisions that were made in the past and now that are kind of coming to a head. And the Southernmost Star, which propels you to the third book, which is essentially battle. Yeah. Battle. But anyway, that's the best way I can describe it. And again, I'm rambling, so yeah.
No, fantastic. I mean, I'm so excited. I cannot wait for it to come out and dive into it and see what they're. Yeah, it is out now. Okay, fantastic.
Yeah, you can buy it on in hardcover and ebook now at Barnes & Noble and Amazon.com, or you can go directly to our website at lightsoutinc.com and just click the link. It'll take you over. You can choose your poison. The paperbacks will be available within the next few days. They're on hold for whatever reason. So paperbacks are like $16.99, hardcovers are $26.99, and the ebooks are $6.99. So you get to choose your adventure.
Outstanding. Yeah, and we'll make sure I have links for that in the show notes as well.
Okay, awesome.
One of the things you mentioned before when you thought you were rambling, but I'm like picking things up, so you don't even realize the value you're given. But you touched on some of the imposter syndrome that I think still comes along with that first book, but by the time you get around to book 2, it seems like that's when it starts to go away. And here you've already got book 3, like, is coming pretty quick. So do you think having that second book helped you finally get over that hump?
Yes, I do. Like for myself, I don't believe in false humility. I think people that convince themselves that I think false humility is a wonderful thing in a grand scope, but as an artist, if you're constantly telling yourself you're not worthy, if you're constantly breaking your abilities down to some kind of, well, maybe it's not good enough, or maybe I just need to do this instead, or if you take your reviews too hard, etc., I know I'm a good writer, and I know that this story is a good series, and I know that because I would read it, and it is exactly what I would want to read. And as long as that's the case for any story that you're writing, that imposter syndrome is nonsense, and you have to stop listening to that inner voice. Mm-hmm. You just have to run with what you have. I mean, there's always room for improvement. That's what editors are for. That's what the editing process is for. And there's always room to, expand on a story or flesh it out some or whatever. But that doesn't make you any less an author, and it doesn't make you any less an artist, and it doesn't make your fiction any less valid or important. So I stopped telling myself by this time with the second book that, maybe nobody gets it. Maybe nobody likes it, So mm-hmm. Now I'm writing for the people like me that are going to pick it up and just fall in love with the characters that I have created. And the reason why I know that they would do that is because I pick up people's books all the time, and it's the same thing for me. And they probably felt the exact same way. You pick up Patrick Rothfuss and you start reading the Kingkiller Chronicles, you just fully immersed, totally in love. And I bet you when he first started out, he had imposter syndrome as well. He's one of the greatest writers in fantasy today. So you just have to believe in yourself and keep going. And so yes, with the second book, I've stopped telling myself that I'm not good and that I'm not worthy and that this story maybe isn't reaching the right audiences. And I've started telling myself my audience is out there and I'm not going to worry about it. They'll find me, and I'm going to keep creating content that I hope that they will love. And that's it. That's all you can do.
I agree. Oh my gosh, that was poetic. That was wonderful. And I love what you said too about you're writing what you want to read, which I think so many, especially first-time authors or beginning authors, they get tied up into, well, what's hot right now? I should write that, or I should write this thing or that thing, instead of thinking about what do you want to read? What do you want? And that your voice comes out when you're writing something that you want to read. Your voice comes through a lot more. And clearly that's working well for you.
I mean, I hope so. I'm going to see how it goes long term. But, so far so good. What do you read, Jason, when you're not reading what you typically write?
Oh my. I like a lot of thrillers.
Yeah, me too.
I kind of run the gambit. Especially since starting the show now, I read all kinds of stuff. Because it's, week in, week out, I'll hear about another fantastic story. So I could be reading a romance or a fantasy or a horror book or something just outrageous, but I tend to go back to something thrilling, just whatever. If it's got me on the edge of my seat, then I love it.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm so weird. Like I don't read fantasy anymore, hardly at all. And it's not that I don't love it. Like when I return to it, it's like I have to devour 4 books at once. I read super, super quickly. But whenever I go to the bookstore now, I'm like, I'm going to go get me some of that true crime. I'm in the thriller section. I'm in the true crime section. And I'm like, this is totally not what I write. This is so strange. Or I read a lot of nonfiction adventure, like John Krakauer's Into Thin Air. I'm obsessed with it. I've read it 18 times. Because I'm Mount Everest, situations like that. Like The Lost City of the Monkey God. Like those books, I'm obsessed with that kind of thing. Yeah. And people say, oh, you read fantasy all the time, I bet. And I'm like, I did, but not now. I don't. It's weird. I don't know how we got on this topic, but we're talking about it.
Well, yeah, it's fun. It's fun because and people enjoy that because we're just riffing.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of the authors that inspire me is Robert McCammon, and I love how it's very thrilling, and he always has something perhaps supernatural that comes out of it, and I love that angle. I love having it's like, yeah, could happen, and it was very influential in my first book. My second one, I kept it more reality based, but going forward, I could see doing a little more in that realm of like, yeah, you never know, the werewolf might pop out, and you're like, whoa, where did that come from?
That's how I feel about Dan Simmons. Have you read any Dan Simmons?
I haven't.
Oh, okay. So Dan Simmons, sorry everybody, but we're gonna have to talk about Dan Simmons. I love Dan Simmons. They actually released a show on AMC for one of my favorite books ever, which was The Terror. And it's about ships that were trying to find the Northwest Passage. This is a true story. So he takes true historical events and he writes kind of like supernatural horror literature around those tales. And it's super riveting. And if you're into that, you're going to dig it. That's all I have to say. 100%. Super well researched. He knows his stuff. So the two books that I like the best by him were The Terror, which is focusing on those two ships. And they actually just found them under the ice.
Wow.
Yeah, which, by the time that I read The Terror, no idea where this crew or this ship had gone because every last man of them is gone. Nobody knows what happened.
Wow.
Super interesting. And then also he wrote The Abominable, which is about Mount Everest, of course it is, and about two climbers trying to find what happened to George Mallory and Sandy Irving, who disappeared in, I think it's 1925, they disappeared. So they come back in like 1926 and they try to climb the mountain and find it. And of course, there's some supernatural elements and stuff that happen in the story. But if you're into that, you're going to freak out about Dan Simmons. I'm just telling you.
And I can give you a recommendation that I have not read yet, but I've just heard about it recently. And it's, oh man, and of course the name has just escaped me. But it's about the Donner family or the Donner Party.
Send it to me.
I will send it to you, and it's actually, I think I talk about it in today's episode that's coming out.
Yes, DM me the
so the episode, the guest and I talk about it because he had talked about it previously. That's how I found out about it. But it's the Donner Party, and it's there's supernatural elements as to why this happened.
Okay, so, I need to read it.
It's a reimagining, so it's awesome. And of course, whenever I come back, I do the post show for this, then I'll have it so everybody will know what I'm talking about too.
Yeah, right.
Meanwhile, I'll send it to you whenever.
So here are all the books that we were talking about today. Have nothing to do with anything else.
That's right.
Read Dan Simmons, everybody. It's amazing. But anyway, yeah, he's one of my favorite authors.
I'm going to tag Dan Simmons now on this episode.
Please do. I'm going to. You know what? I'm going to review the damn Terror or the Abominable. He's just a genius. He's a journalist. The way that he writes is super crisp and clean, like Hemingway, but at the same time, one thought per sentence, very, very clean, but super well researched. Like the amount of time he has to put into one book for the research has to be at least a year, 2 years. Like he just knows his stuff. And I love every character. His women are all strong characters. They're not weak-willed, fainting maidens and whatever. But I think in The Terror, it was just like, you bring some of my darkest fears together in one book, and that's what happens. And plus, you add a mystery. I love mysteries, and especially mysteries that actually occurred. Yeah. So yeah, he even talks about the Shackleton. Like you researched the hell out of that, which was another Donner Party kind of situation.
Oh my gosh.
But anyway, yeah.
That's awesome. Yes. All right. Well, everybody's got lots of books to check out today, but we really want them to check out.
I would like you to check out the Southernmost Star, but if you don't dig that kind of thing, maybe
so everybody's got we're gonna be running the gambit today. Everybody's got lots of books to check out, but yes, for all you fantasy fans or anybody interested, make sure you are checking out, of course, book 1, Sons of Mill, and then the most recent one, the Southernmost Star. Hey, what's book 3 gonna be?
The Children of Danu.
Oh, okay. All right.
Danu is a mother goddess, if you know your Celtic history. Danu was a mother goddess. She was the goddess of the earth. And so the godlike race is the Tuatha De Danann, and that is The Children of Danu in Gaelic.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, hey, where can everybody find and follow you?
I am at LM Riviere Author on all of the things. If you're interested in photography for some absurd reason, that would be at LMR Photo, F-O-T-O, and then LMR Photo, F-O-T-O 2 on all of the things as well. You can check out my personal website at lmriviere.com. You can also buy books on my website if you want to, or you can buy merch. I do sell signed copies of my work on my website. There's also some, merchandise for various items from the book series, like the map, for example. I do bags and shirts if you're so inclined. And then also sign up for my newsletter, please. I've got just a few followers because I'm not pressing it as hard as I probably should be. But for people that sign up for the newsletter, I think we're probably going to start offering some kind of discount or some kind of little bonus extras that they can get from Lights Out Inc. So, and then also please check out lightsoutinc.com to check out our full list of titles. We have 3 main titles right now, 4 with the Southernmost Star, and we're releasing 2 more before summer's end.
Outstanding. Well, like I said, I'm going to have links for all this in the show notes, everybody. So, it's like my name. You don't have to try and spell it out. You just click that link in the show notes, and then boom, you're good to go.
You're the only person that suffers from the last name problem like I do.
Yeah.
Like, no, it's R-I-V as in Victor, not B. Come on.
LaNae, thank you so much for coming back on. This has been a blast.
Thanks for having me and let me ramble on your podcast.
It's so much fun. All right, well, ladies and gentlemen, time to hand the floor over to my guest, LM Riviere with The Southernmost Star.
Hello, everybody. I'm going to read to you from the first chapter of The Southernmost Star because I don't want to give anything away. There will be some spoilers in this, so if you haven't read The Sons of Meal, then I highly recommend that you check that out. And then get back to me. If you have any questions, comments, you want to chat with me about the direction of anything, please check that out at lightsoutinc.com. You're free to message me directly or comment directly on my page. Okay, so chapter 1 of The Southernmost Star. South, NE 50804 Dor Oris, air. Una wished she was dead. Every breath was a losing battle. Any air she managed to squeeze into her lungs burned through her airways like acid. The pounding in her head might have been a 1,000-pound bell, healing back and forth for hours. The fur she lay beneath were as heavy as a 2-ton stone. Something rattled within her chest as if one of her ribs had come loose and was attempting to work itself into her gut. Is this what suffocating felt like? She couldn't be certain, but if this went on much longer, death would be a blessing. Every inch of her hurt, from the tips of her bruised toes to the bleeding hollows of her shrinking gums. She was an aching husk of herself, a parchment stretched taut over disintegrating bones. What was wrong with her? Asked a gruff voice from far off. Spark drag, I'll wager. That voice she knew. She'd have gone cold at the sound if she had any blood left to spare. She's used too much. The unknown speaker whistled. Reason, too bloody right there. If I hadn't seen what she did with my own eyes, I'd never believe any of this was possible. Is she dying? As another tremor galloped along her nerves, bowing her swollen spine, Una also wanted to know the answer to that question. She heard the scrape of a boot near her ear. The air drew close as a hulking figure bent over her. Why couldn't she open her eyes? If her last living act on earth was to spit in his face, she would count her stars. She tried to move her head, but the effort sent spears of lightning down her throat. She might have choked if she had the strength. Instead, she sucked tiny ribbons of air into her taxed lungs and trembled with the urge to weep. The familiar voice cursed. Not if I can help it. No, 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 don't touch her. A flurry of movement. I meant to. If you touch her now, she'll likely kill you without meaning to. Sure, I of her skill level are forbidden to fuel themselves this way, but it can happen. I see, said the heavier voice, clear revulsion in his tone. Gloved fingers probed her face from brow to jaw. Only Dan McBishop would have the gall to lay hands on her so boldly. Pity she was unwell, for she would have loved to drain the arrogant bastard dry. No help for it, I'm afraid, Damick sighed, smoothing back her hair. She hoped he'd be stupid enough to remove his glove. Bring me one of our prisoners, someone healthy but not over-strong. Martin, discreetly, please. The men are already terrified of her. Yes, my lord. Now she recognized that deep, oak-rich voice, Martin O'Riordan, her father's commander-at-arms. Though she hated the circumstances, she was glad of his presence all the same. She had nothing but fond memories of the old soldier and prayed she wouldn't have to harm him to escape. Distracted by distant memories and unbearable pain, she hadn't quite heard Damek's order. What had happened? How had she come to be here? She couldn't glean the details, simply snippets, flashes of brilliant orange flame, men and horses screaming, a cottage consumed by oppressive emerald eyes, Ryan's small limp body against a filthy wooden floor, a black beast with an appetite as bottomless as the sea, Kerr-Yin, the erstwhile Ben Maiden, silver eyes half-lidded, pale hair laying limp over his collar, lips still and cold as wax, and the dead. So many cold creatures she could never count them all. How long had she lain here? Frustration nearly outpaced her pain. Where was Kerr-Yin? Was he alive? Had Ryan survived what Una had done to her? How had Damek gotten hold of her? Una, Damek whispered. Can you hear me? Yes, she wanted to scream. Tell me what happened. Where are my friends? Where is Kerr-Yin? What did you do, Damek? What did I do? I'm sorry for this, but neither of us has a choice. His breath dusted her cheek. Was that genuine regret she detected in his tone? Why? Not the Lord of Clare, surely. Her mind wandered. A flower bloomed in bright spring sunlight, a garden filled with birdsong, damp green things, and warm male laughter. She knew this place, didn't she? The first brush of infatuated longing. Small pleasures, fleeting as the sun in winter. Then she felt the cold stone at her back, the sharp sting of betrayal, a mouthful of teeth and animal hunger chewed through blood and sinew to her thundering heart. Slow simmering rage chased this vision away, cloaking her girlhood fancy in blackest hate. Oh, Damek, come closer. Press your lips to mine, I beg you. My lord, Martin reappeared, this time bearing unhappy resignation in his voice. Someone new whimpered beside him. This one killed a man trying to escape. Best I could find. Good, said Damek, bring her over. The whimpering melded into panic gasps. Una's broken body flooded with dread. Oh, no, 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 no. A silent scream bubbled within Una's chest, raising icebergs in her already frozen blood. Sure, forgive me. Subchapter. Hours or days later, she couldn't say which, Una woke from a doze to find herself tied to a creaking saddle. Disoriented, she shook herself to clear her head, though it did little to help her gain her bearings. From beneath the rim of a heavy cowl, she spied the hard-worn road beneath her horse's hooves. Steady rain bounced back up to her knees from deep puddles on either side, and a host of stripped trees fell away from the wide river snaking past on her right. The Shannon, she knew at a glance. Those blue hills she spied over the horizon told her all she needed to know. This was the Tarrant High Road, and soon they would hug the river at Dumne and then trek south by southwest to Bethany. She was headed home. Damek was taking her to her father. They were leaving her life, her friends, and her freedom behind in the north. When they crossed at 10 Bells, she would be her father's subject once more. Princess of Bethany. The words soured like spoiled milk in her throat. Patrick Donahue's kingdom, the one place in all the world she'd rather die than spend a day. She gnashed her teeth in silent loathing. Una held one power there, one worth. Her value is measured by the potential fruits of her body and whatever price they might fetch for the most ambitious man in Innisfail. There was no worse fate she could imagine for a liberated Tarragonese woman, autonomous in her own right, than the one that awaited her in Bethany. The Duke would marry her off as soon as he was able. Should she dare her use her gifts against any would-be suitors, innocence would suffer in her place. That had ever been the way between Una and her father. She hardly believed anything would have changed, saving maybe the brutality of his vengeance. She had defied him for 14 years already. He didn't care about her, who she was as a person, who her mother had been, who she loved, what she believed, nor what was best for her. Patrick cared about Tarranger. He lusted for an heir unified under his rule. His interest in her terminated with the claim she held in the north and the viability of the meat between her legs. Patrick Donahue wanted to be a king. He would sell her 1,000 times over to achieve that goal. Una must escape before it became impossible. She was not chattel to be bought and sold for anyone's gain, least of all Patrick's. Setting her jaw at a determined angle, she slid her eyes forward and aft. She was surrounded by Southern knights, but none paid close attention to her. Walking their horses at a gentle clip, many were engaged in hushed conversation or leaned over their horses' necks sound asleep. A knight beside her held her reins in a loose grip, gnawing at a browning apple with a haunted, faraway mien. Everywhere her eyes came to rest, she saw men worse for wear. Some were missing digits from appendages swaddled in unsanitary bandages, many spotted cuts and bruises that no one had bothered to tend. All wore expressions loaded with disbelief, pain, or numb horror. Una felt a little sympathy for them. They were murderers all. Led north by their own lust and greed, these men were no less guilty than her duplicitous cousin in his quest for power. If she slipped quietly from her saddle, maybe one of them would lean down to grab her. No, too public. Perhaps she should demand a nature break, and when led away, she could. I could hear the cogs turning in your head from here, cousin, Damek laughed from behind her. She didn't bother to crane her neck to look at him. Why waste the effort for such a useless view? She huffed. Afraid yet? He kicked his mount forward and drew up beside her. She looked away, fuming. Not really. Though seeing you now after all these years, I wonder how I never noticed that you are. Always have been too, I gather. How charming. She ground her molars together. The only words with the power to sting were truth. You are not cowed, she told herself. He will make a mistake eventually, and you'll be free again one way or the other. She squared her shoulders and raised her chin as high as it would go. Perhaps all these armored men frighten me. Will you hold me? He rewarded her with a throaty chuckle that was much deeper than the one she remembered. She stole a glance at him from the corner of her eye and wished she hadn't. His smirk made her want to rip his jugular out with her teeth. Not yet, Lady Donahue. I won't presume until you ask me seriously, of course. I'd rather drink crushed glass, Lord Bishop. His smile bordered on the lascivious. The years had been kind to her cousin. He was taller, broader through the chest and shoulders, and the flesh of his cheeks had settled into the sharp bones of his face. Arching black brows swept over violet and green eyes. He was very handsome. She hated him the more for it. Oh, I don't know about that. One day I may grow on you, my Lady Donahue. My name is Una Mora. I am prima of the cloister of the eternal flame and a free citizen of Terrigare. You have no right to hold me against my will. He shook his head with that annoying, affable grin. Reason, but you're beautiful in a temper, even covered in filth and scrapes. He hummed a sound that made Una burn with rage. Don't get angry. That's what he wants. What do you think, Martin? Is she not the loveliest woman you've ever set eyes upon? Don't get angry. Don't get angry. Don't. My lord, Martin cleared his throat. Perhaps it is unwise to. Damick was having the time of his life at her expense. Her nostrils flared. I'm not some tavern wench, Damick. I'm the Domo's granddaughter and heir. For all your education, your sense of direction is rather pathetic, isn't it? His men, save Martin, chuckled around her. When my grandmother hears of this, as if he'd been waiting for this threat, he pulled a rolled bit of vellum out of his tunic and wagged it under her nose. She looked away, taking deep breaths. Recognizing Nima's seal at a glance, she could guess what it read. Should I read it for you? No. She knew where this must be headed. Oh, what a shame, he said, waving the scroll back and forth. It's such a fun yarn. Old Grandmama has been deposed. Seems the Red City is under new management, and this, he paused to read her name. Vananima is now Doma. Want to know what the new Doma thinks of you and your family, my love? Fuck yourself. Whatever my lady advises, of course. You've made your point. Have I? Yes, she hissed, fighting tears. Her grandmother, her family. She didn't know how they'd come to this pass so quickly, but had no doubt who had orchestrated the coup. Nima had tried to kill Una 3 times already, and only Shorin knew what she'd been doing in Terrigare since. Though Una had been oblivious to the trouble brewing within the cloister while she remained within its walls, now that she was out in the world, she had been disabused of that ignorance rather quickly. The Red City had chafed under Drem's rule for some years. Hell, half the North cried out for more blood. 40 years of heavy-handed doctrine and policy stripped the poorest in Innisfail of taxes they could ill afford and resources they could hardly spare. Furthermore, Una bore her share of responsibility on that score. Her untimely disappearance revealed a chasm of weakness within the cloister that had surely fanned these flames. The people sought new leadership, justly or no. It seemed the scales had finally tipped in Nima's favor. Una didn't want to know anymore. Her heart couldn't process so many tragedies at once. Damick threw the scroll at her. She let it bounce off of her wounded arm and roll from her horse's flank into the mud. Unless I march up there and force the issue, your mother's name means nothing now. Your inheritance, your power, and your titles, nothing. That missive declares you a heretic and traitor, Una, anathema. Your precious city would have you burn. The way I see it, I've saved your life. When you're done playing the self-pitying child, you might see sense one day. He watched her closely while she swallowed wave after wave of misery. She averted her gaze, blinking back, the hot tears boiling in her eyes. The men around her made no bones about their disapproval of her, curled their lips and shook their heads. How many of their number were dead now because of her? Lost your tongue? He pressed on. While the blame couldn't wholly be laid at Una's feet, neither could she deny she'd played her part. If she hadn't trusted Nima's creature gone, if she hadn't tried to run away, before that, if she hadn't buried herself in her studies and shirked her duty to her family, perhaps none of this would have happened. If she'd stayed in Terrigare, would things have been different? Could Nima have been thwarted or the Mora clan have presented a unified front? Who knew? There was an equal chance that Una would have been murdered in her bed and the same result achieved regardless. She might never know, but that would dispel her own guilt in either case. She was an outcast now, anathema, precisely as Damick had said. Una, his tune softened. Do you really think that that old miser and She was going to help you? The She couldn't spare a tinker's spark for any of us. So long as we pay our taxes, keep off their lands, and steer well clear of their kind, they don't care what we do to each other here in air. We're all you have, cousin. I hope you come to see that before it's too late. Rather than allow her to spoil her speech with a rebuttal, he kicked his mount into the forward line. He didn't look back. An old trick, this, but effective. Una was left alone in a sea of creaking leather and hostile glares. Friendless, unmoored, and insolvent, she bit her lower lip until it bled and suffered in silence. Subchapter. As they led their mounts close to the river 2 days later, Una's chances to escape thinned by the mile. Damek had thought of everything, of course. She was bound day and night. No one spoke to her unless directed. No one touched her or came near her without a thick pair of gloves. No one even looked her way except to feed her, cart her to the privy, or tie her to her cot every night. The first time she attempted to talk to someone, Damek had the poor fellow digging latrines that evening. When she tried to wander deeper into the woods to relieve herself, Damek had her escort replaced with prisoners, each given a lash for every yard she had dared stray. Una was fed with wooden spoons and drank from wooden dippers. If she drifted too far when they stopped, struggled with their handlers, or made any moves that appeared suspicious in the least, Damek punished the innocent to spite her. After a few days of this, Una had retreated within herself. She moved when and where she was told, kept her eyes resolutely forward, and never opened her mouth but to accept food or water. She might have been a doll for all the trouble she caused. If he wanted her docile, so be it. She would wait, watch, and plan. Damek made none of the mistakes she hoped he would. He didn't converse with her except to impart orders or inquire about her well-being. He spent little to no time in her immediate vicinity and scarcely looked at her save when absolutely necessary. So much for thinking she could tempt him to lower his guard. She knew escape wasn't going to be easy, but Damek was going well out of his way to make it impossible. When the gulls called from the bay and the smoke from 10 Bells rose in the distance, Una swore she wouldn't be defeated so easily. She would get out of this even if it killed her. Carry in, she thought. Please be alive. Please be safe. I will come back for you. Subchapter. A gibbous moon was high in the late autumn sky when Damek's men wound their way through 10 Bells' twisting lanes. Una was in a lead group strapped to her saddle as usual, and Damek himself held her reins. Another hope dashed. She had thought to create a ruckus in the street and pray the townsfolk would intercede long enough for her to get away. No such luck. If the Lord of Clare held her leash, no one would dare challenge him for his prisoner. They were in the south now. Damek's influence held far more weight here than hers. Not that many of these folks would even know who she was on sight. Tarangire was a faithful trading partner here, but not many Shorai ever made the trip. Merchers and students of the Libellum were the few Taranganese faces she spied. Her people tended to congregate around the universities in the West Moorings, while here in the north end, they were mostly farmers' stalls, taverns, and stately inns astride the Taran High Road. She imagined they'd cross the Limerick Bridge at first light tomorrow and from there travel south along the Mallow High Road to Bethany. It wouldn't be long now. She had but a few days left to get away. Once she was in her father's keep, she might be chained to a wall for the rest of her days. Her mind worked so furiously to uncover a solution to her situation that she barely noticed they'd stopped until Damek pulled her into his well-covered arms. Without ado, he set her down, grasped her shoulders, and wheeled her toward an impressive three-story building. The Ferryman, its beautifully painted sign red, was easily one of the most well-appointed inns she'd ever clapped eyes upon. This was no surprise. 10 Bells had fiend to spare. Though it wasn't as large a city as Tarangire or Bethany, 'twas likely richer than both. 10 Bells was a thriving commercial hub overflowing with more rich trade guilds, labor unions, and banks than anywhere else in Innisfail. 10 Bells Mercantile Union traded as far away as balmy Francia and old Europa, and its banks held a fair monopoly over the bustling Taranganese colony in Kimry. If she wasn't mistaken, the Kimrian Winemakers Guild's home office wasn't far from their present position, just over the Limerick and down the docks, or so she recalled from her studies. 10 Bells owed a great deal of its success to the Guild's founding charter. Additionally, the city was neutral. It took no sides in any conflict continent-wide. Being that almost every other city in Innisfail depended upon it for crucial trade, there was very little danger of that changing anytime soon. When someone makes you rich, you tend to leave them to their business. Sure, men had made the mistake of sacking the city in the past, her grandfather for one, but when the fiend ran dry and those men couldn't replicate the Guild's results, 10 Bells' charter was returned and the merchants were left well alone. Only madmen and zealots bite the hand that feeds. Damek led her over swept columns in perfect repair toward the wide-covered veranda yawning from the inn's northwestern facade. A lamplighter on stilts tapped his way down the street, brandishing his matches like a well-trained magician. A snap, twist, and flare and another glass bauble would cast ambient light over his charming thoroughfare. Though the rooftops climbed too high to view properly from her angle, every structure's architecture was pre-transition. Stone row houses with corniced windows and exquisite gabling lined each side of the street. The ferryman took up the majority of the southernmost corner. They were met at the door by a fussy majordomo who led them through a series of candlelit alcoves to a private dining area beneath a sweeping grand staircase. Damek nodded to Martin, whose job it would be to sort the men and see their accommodations for the evening. The majordomo bent almost double in obeisance to the Lord of Clare before Damek waved him away. A few wealthy patrons were seated inside the dining room. These diners tucked themselves deep within their booths to avoid the attention of so many armed men. On the opposite side of the huge double hearth lay a larger tap room occupied by the general public. If the fire wasn't quite so hot, Una could almost squeak through to the other side and out the front door before anyone could stop her. Her cousin noted the direction of her gaze and wagged a finger. No. Soon she was unceremoniously shoved into a tall wooden booth near the rear wall. Damick took the seat beside her. Chewing her cheek raw, she faced the polished window to observe the lamplighter's progress. She didn't turn when others squeezed into the booth. Upon his return, Martin, as always, took the seat on his lord's opposite side. Damick's hand found Una's shoulder, his pressure firm. Keep your hood up, speak to no one, and try not to let anyone see your face. She shrugged his hand away. Martin, he said, aside, have you ordered? Yes, my lord. Whatever was best for our officers in here, soup and bread for the boys outside. Room and board are sorted too. Fellows will head to the way station next door, brass upstairs, 2 to a room. You are to have the suite on the top floor as soon as its tenant is vacated. I had them send out for, ladies' things as well. Excellent. What's for supper then? Didn't ask. I could eat a bloody horse. Damick leaned over to Una. Are you thirsty? She didn't look at him. A serving girl carried over a heavy tray laden with bread, salted butter, and 5 tankards of ale. The men leapt at the tray like starved hogs. Damick slapped one fellow's hand and set his tankard in front of Una. Wait your turn, Ridley, ladies first. Una rolled her eyes but didn't waste her breath to argue. She was parched. Living in a patriarchy was Ridley's bloody problem. Even with her hands bound, she managed to lift and pour half of the heavy vessel's contents down her throat in 2 gulps. The spiced ale warmed her from her throat to her toes. She hadn't had a decent meal in days, though she was becoming rather accustomed to roughing it outdoors. She could hardly refuse one when offered. Clearly amused, Damick slid his trencher of bread and butter toward her. It, too, did not last long. She stopped chewing long enough to take a sip of her ale before she got back to work. Damick passed her a second helping, then his own tankard. She didn't complain. Sure bless the Brewers Guild and 10 bells. Only the Hart and Roswell had better ale, and she was working very hard not to think about that at all. Damick wore an odd smile on his face while he watched her cheeks puff out like a chipmunk. Chuckling, Martin also slid her his bread and the hunk of cheese he pilfered from another table. Bless Martin O'Riordan, too, she thought. How'd you meet him? Damick asked, pressing his chin against his knuckles. Meef who? She managed around a mouthful of cheese. Carrie Adair, of course. She would not rise to Damick's bait. Not now. She kept her eyes on her food. Torturing herself wouldn't help anyone. Swallowing her bread went down her throat like a lump of coal. Does it matter? Yes, damn you. He killed over 24 men trying to take you back. One of my best lieutenants as well, a man of no mean skill. I've never seen someone move like him. Damick frowned at the areas of conjuring Carrion's face. His reputation was understated, you ask me. Una said nothing, her heart racing. He'd come for her, tried to save her. After that thing tore a hole in his chest the size of LaNae, he'd come to take her back. She couldn't believe it. Not Ben, or Carrion. He wasn't the type. Yet, Damick had no reason to lie. It certainly didn't make him look the grander for having said anything, did it? She hesitated. Was he killed in the attempt? Damick's smile was cruel. You first. The serving girl brought another round of tankards. Damick claimed 2 more without breaking eye contact. Una reached for hers, but he held it shy of her finger as she groaned. If you're asking why he wanted to help me, I don't have an answer for you. He happened by when I was dragged behind a horse and almost beaten to death, and this after I'd managed to escape. Raleigh and his men. You're lying about Raleigh. He and his boys were killed by the same man that killed those 2 beasts in Ferndale and a cadre of armed corsairs down the road. Come on, cousin, do try to show me at least the fraction of the respect I deserve. I don't know what you want me to say. He saved my life and we traveled together. That's all there is. He thought he might help me over the border, and I intended to help him reclaim his title in the process. We met in the middle. Damick took a sip of his ale and snorted into his tankard. You're in love with him. Una went still as a stone. She didn't respond for quite some time, but when she did, her tone aimed to kill. What of it? Damick's hand paused over his trenchers, eyes glowing cold murder. Oh, good. I hoped I'd have the pleasure of watching your heart break. My lord, Martin attempted from his left elbow. What do you mean? Una asked, trying in vain to keep the fear from her voice. Damick's grin was a knife slash in the firelight. He toasted her. The crown prince is dead, Una. I watched him fall myself. You're on your own now, love. I hope you're ready for what follows.
And that was L.M. Riviere with her latest novel, The Southernmost Star. It is book 2 of the Innisfail Cycle. It's available right now, so click that link in the show notes for the book and for everywhere that you can find L.M. Riviere. Fantastic lady, fantastic services, and a fantastic publishing company that she's got, so click that in the show notes. While you're there, don't forget to also click the links for our sponsors, partners, and podcast friends alike. And hit that subscribe button or follow button or whatever it is now so that you don't miss out next week when we're back with another return guest, Teresa Halverson, back with her latest book, River City Widows. That's next week. We'll see you then.
This has been a presentation of the Project Entertainment Network.